The conversations and information provided are not intended to substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment.
The opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not reflect the view of Humana Military or the Department of Defense.
Welcome to the Operation Within podcast, where we talk about health and a deeper sense of well-being.
Operation Within is a collective initiative to optimize holistic health matters and nourish within community, within self, and within family.
Thank you for joining the conversation on Operation Within podcast. We are your hosts, Mel
and Marty, and our conversations are real, they're raw, and reflective.
These conversations offer meaningful dialogue on experiences within the military community, oriented to empower and strengthen health and vitality in our communities who serve.
We want to give a special thanks to Humana Military and our partners who have brought Operation Within to life.
Let's dive in.
All right, how's everyone doing? Welcome back to the Operation Within podcast with Mel and Marty. Today I'm riding solo, and today I have a very, very special guest with us, and just want to take a moment to learn more about this individual, learn more about what he does, but more importantly, learn more about what his organization is doing for the greater San Antonio community. And as we've gotten to know one another and we've talked about that holistic health, we're talking about the well-being of our community. We focus on exercise. We focus on these resources that are out there to take care of us. But I got to tell you, this is exciting for me because as a retiree, this community, the San Antonio Food Bank, and giving back to this community, this was something that I was really looking forward to as a retiree. And I'll explain more as we get into this conversation. But what I want to do is, Eric Cooper, I want to welcome you to our podcast. How you doing, sir?
Marty, I'm doing great and super excited to be with you and listeners and, just get to know each other a little bit better.
Excellent. Yeah, I was as I was prepping for our conversation, and I try not to do too much research. I want it to be open and free. And again, our conversations, we want them to be raw. And we want them to be reflective. That is really our target. So as I was, obviously everything happens for a reason, and I do believe in fate, and I believe in destiny. And I believe we get paired up with different individuals from our community. And I really, really love that I'm paired up with you today, so we can learn more about you. But I'm a fan of the San Antonio Food Bank. I am a longtime volunteer of the San Antonio Food Bank, the organization I represent, Team Red, White, and Blue. Here in San Antonio, we support the San Antonio Food Bank monthly. We participate anything from the urban farm, bathing the goats. We've bathed the goats to working in the warehouse and sorting food. And again, and we'll learn more about that. But I got to tell you, as a veteran service member, 24 years, when I came home and I made San Antonio my final pit stop, I really wanted to find a way to give back. I wanted to find a way to give back because the Air Force and the military had done so much for me and my family. We've been given tremendous opportunities. So I figured, what can I do to give back, tell my story, share what the Air Force has done for us? And oh, by the way, work with other veterans through VSOs like Team Red, White, and Blue or Travis Manion Foundation, the local VFW, whatever it may be. So one of the first organizations, one of the first things I did is I actually volunteered to work at the urban farm. That was one of my earliest memories of working here in San Antonio, volunteering. And I got to tell you, I was hooked. So again, this is very, very special. So thank you for spending time with us today. Again, we want to learn more about the food bank, kind of hear your story, how you got started with the food bank. But more importantly is, how is the San Antonio Food Bank, how are we changing lives? Not necessarily just addressing the food insecurities, but from a volunteer standpoint, how are we transforming those lives as well? And again, if you get a chance to Google or YouTube the TEDx San Antonio, there's a very, very good TED Talk from Mr. Eric Cooper, short 10-minute talk. And I think you'll learn more about what we're talking about today. But anyway, Eric, definitely want to learn more about you. So how did you get started with the food bank? And what drives you to continue to serve this awesome community.
Well, Marty, first, let me just say thank you for your service to our country. I mean, serving in the Air Force and then serving here locally at home. I mean, the opportunity, I think, for all of us to make a difference. We're all here on the planet for a reason. And how are we spending our time? How are we making it better? And the privilege that I have is to have this incredible opportunity to work at the San Antonio Food Bank. I've been there for about 20 years. But I've been in this space for about 28 years. I was with the food bank in North Texas before being recruited. The food bank here in San Antonio's been around for 40 years, and it's been incredible to see the growth, and we are truly a reflection of the community. And I think because San Antonio is such a great place, we have to be a great organization because it's all those ingredients that kind of go into the food bank. I was a business major, entrepreneur, started, my work life at a young age, I guess. I mean, I think, my parents were always covering the basic needs, but, if we wanted to, get some new clothes or something like that, we had to earn it. And so, I mean, I just grew up just always peddling something, knocking doors, doing sales, all of that kind of stuff. And I bring that out because I really think that it's what made me who I am today, appreciative of the fact that people should work according to their ability, but receive according to their need. And when I think of the work of the food bank, there's a lot of need in kids and seniors, but there's a lot of power to actually working. And it's not just being able to be self-sufficient and supply financially to cover your needs, but the power of work from a mental health perspective. And we're going to get into how service plays into that. But, being in motion, being engaged, having something that you're working towards and with is so transformative and powerful that you just have to fall out of that to realize, how catalytic and transformative being engaged in work is.
That's amazing. I'll tell you what, I tell my peers as we go out and support different projects like the Texas Ramp Project, or we were at Soldiers Angels, or we're at Haven for Hope, wherever it may be. And I make it a point to try to bring my daughter with me. She's a college student, and again, it's a great way to just showcase, like, we've been very privileged. I know we grew up different than a lot of these folks, but what we take for granted. There's sodas in the fridge, or ramen noodles on the cupboard, and we get to pick whatever we want. Some of these families, if you walk through downtown, through the bus station or whatever, and you realize they don't have a choice, right? So how do we help this community? So I love that you've been able to give back. 20 years, that's a long time. That's the world has changed significantly these last 20 years, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's been incredible. And I love what you said, Marty, and engaging your daughter in service, because I do think that the food bank serves both sides of the community. And what I mean by that is just the side that has resources and then the side that needs resources, or sometimes we call it our give help and get help. It's so important for all of us to serve and give. And I do believe that I'm not going to be able to solve hunger with a canned good, but what I'm going to be able to do is solve it with compassion and building understanding. And if people really understand the need and understand why there's hunger, then they're going to do something about it. And if I have more CEOs of conscience, if I have more leaders of good policy, elected officials, then the strategies that can ultimately move people out of my line and to be more self-sufficient and self-reliant is more capable. And then just the reality that what I've learned in the last 20 years is when you're feeling so overwhelmed that you can barely make it, and when you feel like, you've got more trials than you can ever, handle, and the weight of the world is just going to crush you. The quickest and easiest way to lighten that load is just to take the load of somebody else on your back. And it seems so counterintuitive that, wait a minute, I can barely handle the weight of my own trials. If I handle somebody else's it's going to kill me. But what it does is it recalibrates you. It gives you this perspective that actually allows you to go through your trial a little bit better. And in some ways, you walk away after helping someone grateful that your trials are yours. My dad used to always say, trials are like a sock hop. And as a kid, I'm like, what's a sock hop? I mean, I had no clue. And for those listeners that don't know, I guess this is my understanding was they had these school dances at the gym, and the coaches didn't want the floor all scuffed up with shoes. So everybody took their shoes off and they would dance in their socks on the gym floor. Well, the lights are off, and, when you're leaving the dance, there's this pile of shoes at the door. And my dad said there was all this temptation to kind of upgrade because, you could probably snatch somebody else's shoes and no one would ever know. But he says when you slip on someone else's shoes, you'd realize they're not that comfortable. They're not that broke in. They might have looked better, but your shoes are your shoes. And I guess I was in some way trying to make the connection to trials that they're yours. And honestly, probably they're most comfortable, and there's only one person that's capable to get through it, and that's you. And I want everybody to know that I believe they are capable to get through their trials.
I love that analogy. I really do, because I'll tell you that as a veteran, and just understanding, talking to my peers and the families that are supporting the veteran community, or even just the community at large, we know that we are all carrying a burden, and that is something that we try to just remind folks. And I know in my past experience, I used to teach for the Air Force, and we had lessons on leadership and problem solving and conflict. How do we deal with conflict, and why, and self-awareness? Why do people react the way they react? And at the end of the day, it comes down to, you don't know what that person is dealing with in that moment, whether it was loss or whether it was, there was maybe a message of, hey, you didn't get the promotion, or maybe things just aren't going your way, or there's another separation coming up in the family, another deployment. And for military families, another separation, another 4 months, 6 months away from the family, I mean, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal, because now the parent, the mom or the dad, whoever's staying back, they have to fill the role of both parents, and they have to fill the role of caregiver and ensuring that the member's deployed. So I love that analogy about everybody's carrying a burden. But I'll tell you that as I retired, and I felt I had a pretty good career, a solid career. I was successful. My daughters, had their basic needs met. So did I. But again, coming back, I really wanted to kind of expand and share my experience. So I grew up in South Texas. I grew up in far McAllen area, down in the border town, and I am one of 10 children. I was actually just home this past weekend visiting family, and I remember as a child getting 2 pieces of bread and putting lettuce in it and mustard, and I made a lettuce sandwich because that's all we had. And, mom, cooking beans because that's all we had. And I remember for days, I'm like, why are we only eating beans? And I remember those tough times that my daughters never got to experience. So, but I want them to know that, there are people out here that are, we definitely weren't middle class. We were struggling with basic needs, but my parents found a way to get us through. But that taught us a very important lesson is, hey, when you have the ability to give back, right? And just appreciate all those little things, even if there's some old worn down shoes. I've been to a sock hop, so I know exactly, I understand that reference. I appreciate that. But I'll tell you that as I came back to San Antonio, all of those things are ingrained in me. And I knew that I wanted to give back because I know those are the things that enrich my life, right? And if you know anything about Team Red, White, and Blue, or one of the pillars is our mission is to enrich the lives of America's veterans. And the enrichment piece has three components to it. It contains people, it's about health, and it's about purpose, right? How do we enrich lives is by connecting people to people, by promoting a healthier lifestyle, and giving somebody a purpose. And to me, I found my purpose serving at the food bank, bathing those goats, picking those weeds from the urban farm, because it really did made me feel good. And I didn't want anybody to know. I didn't want to sign my name. I wanted to be completely obscure because I genuinely wanted to give back and say, man, thank you. Like, you don't have to pay me. I'll work as long as you want. But that made me feel really good. And I got to tell you, the first 9 months of transitioning, I was going through some difficult times, but I always look forward to volunteering at the food bank because that's the one thing I knew that I was making a difference. And I had lost that a little bit when I came out of retirement. It's like, man, I don't have a purpose. Like, what am I doing? I'm walking my dog. That's my purpose. But I got to tell you that the food bank gave me that purpose. So is that a common theme in volunteers? I mean, what have you seen in your 28 years of service in the food bank?
Yeah, Marty, I mean, it's so great to hear you talk. And, the food bank, we feed about 120,000 people a week since the pandemic started. I mean, it's just a tremendous amount of struggle and need that we're trying to meet. And I think so often when people hear about the food bank, they automatically connect our role in meeting that need, but don't necessarily make this connection to what I think you're talking about today. And that is, when it comes to our health, it's so critical to have good nourishment, right? You got to eat right. And you got to exercise. You got to stay mobile. You got to, stay in the game, keep your body moving. But the mental health side of wellness, you said it in the core principles of just, it's got to be purpose. And when you can serve at the food bank, we're going to put you either working in that urban farm, or you can work in the barn with the goats. You can work in the warehouse packing boxes, and one of our kitchens making meals, or out on the front lines, handing out food, even helping us serve some homebound seniors, delivering some food boxes. There's a lot of different ways for people to get involved. And we tend to say that all ages and all abilities are welcome. We're the largest recipient of special needs volunteers that are coming to the food bank to make a difference. And I'm so inspired when I see individuals that are overcoming obstacles of whatever level, giving and serving. And I bring it back to, our bodies need it. We need it. If you think biblically, the widow's mites, right? She was a widow. She struggled, and she gave. She served. Why? Because it was transformative for her. For her to be able to do that gave to her blessings that we can't even describe or imagine. And I think the true reality, and you mentioned my TED Talk, and I talk a little bit about volunteer vitamins, but volunteers live longer than non-volunteers. So if you're selfish, you're greedy, you want to hang out with yourself and do nothing for nobody, then, it's going to be a short, maybe miserable life. But when you give your life to service, to helping others, to think about something bigger than yourself, and it has to be altruistic. It has to be pure. You have to give because you want to help someone. All of a sudden, what's broken in you becomes healed. And it is what I've seen time and time again. And there's been times where my paradigm's been blown. I mean, I've shared the story of meeting this man in my lobby who, when you think about feeding 120,000 people a week, a lot of people, stop in and say thank you, or send, letters or emails, and they just want to make sure that somebody accepts their gratitude. And so this gentleman came to me in our lobby and just said, "Hey, I just wanted to thank you so much." And I said, "Well, you're welcome." And he quickly started to share his story. And he said that he and his wife had an 11-year-old daughter, and she had struggled from leukemia and unfortunately had lost that battle, and they lost her. And he said that he and his wife just struggled after her passing with their relationship, and they didn't seem to be able to communicate, and that, they just didn't have what they used to have. And so they separated and got divorced, and he talked about that level of despair, and how He lost his job. His boss was all over him because he wasn't producing what he used to produce. And he said, to be honest, I couldn't wake up in the mornings. All I wanted to do was sleep. I didn't even want to eat because I just, my life lost everything. And so I was like, well, I'm glad we could be there for you. Is there anything else I can help you with? And he said, well, it was actually, I saw an ad in the paper for the food bank that you needed volunteers. And, I was like, well, I could do that. And I came and he said, I realized in a short amount of time how many boxes we packed, and your staff told me how many meals we all generated. And he's like, so I came back, and I've been coming, and, there's a reason for me to be. And he says, you gave me purpose, and you alluded to that earlier. And I think that incredible space of helping people live in their finest hour, and that's, I think, what the food bank's all about, is just helping someone live in their finest hour. And whether that's giving them an opportunity to volunteer or to be nourished and get food, that's a destination we want for everybody.
Absolutely. I love that story. And that's one of our priorities here with this Operation Within is we want to really highlight is how do we start healing within? And there's plenty of, the 10-minute abs. I'm going to get 10-minute abs and it's going to happen right away. I think one of General McChrystal, he has a TED Talk, and he talks about the 10-minute abs and how sometimes we just want something right away. We want instant gratification. And yes, there's ways, there's plenty of resources out there that are ready to help. But again, it's like, I can lead you to the water. I can provide you this information. I can give you literature. I can give you a cool hat or a cool shirt with a nice logo. But the healing has to start within. And I think we have to acknowledge that it is okay not to be okay. And we have to acknowledge that, okay, there are other folks in my space. There are peers, other families that are dealing with the same, if not worse. So just trying to reconcile kind of overall, where am I at in life? And then more importantly is, what can I do to help be part of the solution? Right? Because again, we can provide the best medicine, we can provide the best everything, but if you're not doing your part to heal, right, or do whatever it takes to get better, then all that medicine and all this literature and all these podcasts, it has to come from within. And I love that's where we're focusing our energy in these conversations. It's about finding that within. And for me, I love that. I love what the food bank is doing, but I'll tell you that the food bank will never know how much that they've helped me. And that's okay. And because to me, that was my way of healing, my way of transitioning, my way of giving back. And I always think back to that lettuce sandwich. I mean, it's something obscure and small, and people laugh, you didn't have a lettuce sandwich. I did. And I remember that was like the best thing in the house that moment. And I was like, yes, I've got 2 pieces of bread and lettuce. So can you, so thank you for sharing that story, but can you remember a time while you've been at this food bank of a family or another individual or an instance that truly just changed your life? That just like, man, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. Was there a moment that just sticks out to you?
Yeah. So again, thank you, Marty. You're bringing up so many incredible points, and when you think about the health benefits of volunteerism and service, it's intuitive to maybe think that it's just mental health, but there's physical health benefits, and there's a lot of great research and data that suggests that it can cure a lot of diseases, physical ailments, and you wouldn't think that that's possible, but it really is true. You just have to volunteer to experience it. We've all been taught it's better to give than to receive, and it's easy to say. You experience the opportunity to give in the purest form. It's love. And I think food is love. And I think your story about the lettuce sandwich hits on the issue that food is so powerful. It's memories, it's culture, it's tradition, it's the holidays. It brings people together. It's probably why you went back to the valley and gathered with family, and it was, you had some meals and some things that brought back, a lot of feelings, and it's just, food can be transformative, and for many of us, maybe it was our first date that was over a meal, right? And so the power of that, and when people don't have it, when you lack the ingredients that's pulling you to the table, you lose a lot of the social aspects. And again, speaking about research, there's great data that suggests that, kids that eat around a dinner table are more likely to go to college. They're less likely to do drugs. They're more open with their parents and talking about, critical issues. But if you lack those ingredients that pull you to the dinner table, you lost more than just that meal. And so this opportunity that I've had to really provide food to families in their season of struggle, and I call it that because seasons come and go, and most families are just doing what they can, and it's when those crises hit that they lean on the food bank. And one day this gentleman walked in, my staff were working with him, and he was just so heartbroken and frustrated that they thought it would be helpful if I talked to him. And when I said hello, he couldn't look me in the eye. He wouldn't even just hung his head. And I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And oftentimes when people are asking for help, they're almost trying to explain why, right? And there's no no need for that, but they want to make sure that hey, this is what's going on. And he started to share how he and his wife had 2 children, and they were everything to him, and he was in college and had graduated and was in PA school and was really working to try to finish up his education. And because of his work schedule, he worked for a local bank. He couldn't get the last few classes the last year or so of his education. And so he worked part-time and his wife worked full-time so that he could finish up. And he said, I was working full-time and going to school full-time. And I'm like, that's incredible. And he said that because of that decision, his wife wasn't making that much money, that they just didn't have food. And so he was coming in to get some groceries to nourish his family. And as I said, well, that's great. We're going to help you, and things are going to be okay. And he said, well, if my dad knew I was here, he would be so ashamed of me. And the way he said it, and I understood, but it broke my heart. I mean, to hear really how amazing this individual was, and how his goals were so high, and how he was working, doing everything that he possibly could to make it happen. And, groceries just out of reach, and the feelings that a parent would be ashamed brings a lot of guilt. It brings a lot of shame. It brings a lot of hurt and mental struggle that he had to get through to just get to our front door, but now was processing all of that. And it's that shame that oftentimes keep people away from asking for help. And I think, of all the things I could say, I don't know where this came from, but quickly I said to him, well, tell your dad you're on scholarship. And he looked at me and I said, I don't know any parent that doesn't brag that their kid's on scholarship. Somebody provided resources so that they could get through their education. And that's all we're doing for you today, is providing a little food scholarship. And, you're going to graduate, you're going to go on to bigger and greater things. And this lesson is going to help you interact with your patients that might be going through their season of struggle, but it's going to help you in your relationship with your dad. All of us are in need of something. All of us are in need of something. And when we can overcome all of that stigma and pride and whatever it is that gets in the way, and have that real conversation, good things happen. And today's a good day. And I count my blessings that I was able to be a part of that transaction, that experience, that moment where someone was asking for help. And so my gratitude to him was that was offered. And, Marty, time and time again, all of us are given these opportunities to be a hero, to give, to serve. And sometimes we don't take those opportunities. Sometimes we let them pass. And I would just encourage everyone, when you feel that prompting, when you feel that, like, man, I need to do that, just do it. Do it.
I'm reminded of the shame that you talk about. It's this two things real quick. When I went home this weekend to see my family, one of my nieces, I hadn't seen her since 2003, and I'd seen her at my father's funeral. And a lot has changed since 2003. But this weekend, we were able to connect. We broke bread, just sharing about family and what has happened, and just sharing in the moment, because she has recently lost her father as well. So we were able to connect, and we took this picture, and I love the photo that we took. She's like, this is my favorite picture of the weekend. And again, but it was over, we broke bread, and we were able to just really share what was in our heart. You talk about shame. One of the events that we support through Team Red, White, and Blue here in San Antonio is we go to the monthly Soldiers Angels mobile food distribution down at the Cowboys Dance Hall. And I love doing that. That is, I think we feed monthly about 300 veteran families. That is targeted to veteran families. And I always see the San Antonio Food Bank truck roll in, or HEB. There's some pallets from HEB or whatnot. But a lot of organizations always contribute to that. And I remember sitting in line, and I've been in line, and I've bagged the food, and I've handed them to cars. And one time, one of my peers says, hey, so-and-so is going to roll down through, so, hey, just don't make a big deal of it. Don't, just try not to look them in the eye. And I'm like, why not? If they're here and they need help, let's give them a hug. So I made it a point that as they drove up, I wanted to give them a hug. And I was waiting, but it was that, I was like, why should anybody be ashamed? If you need help, just ask for help. And because times are tough. And I'm looking at, July 2021, if we rewind to July of 2020, and you talked about, my burden is I'm going to commit to service so I can make my burden easier. So talk about how COVID and this year, I mean, how did that really ramp up the food bank, the San Antonio Food Bank, and your place in this community, and helping veterans who are dealing with post-traumatic stress, who are dealing with separation, who are deployed? I mean, how did the food bank, how are you able to really, really bring home some positivity into families?
Yeah. So again, just thank you. And thank you for being out there with one of our great partners, Soldiers Angels. And, those food distributions occur every day all over South Texas. We've got, multiple sites that are always helping families, in addition to our great nonprofit food pantry partners that stock groceries in neighborhoods and communities to get people food. And I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't just say, if you're in need, please go to our website at safoodbank.org, or call us on our helpline at 210-431-8326. Again, 210-431-8326. If you're in need, we'll connect you right in your community. Doesn't matter where you're at in South Texas. We'll make sure that we're getting you access to groceries or meals, and then our staff will help you apply for some of those public benefits that you may be eligible for. And if you're in need of work, we're connected to workforce strategies. And so we really want to help families. And you think about that thought that maybe asking for help is equal to admitting failure. And that's just not a correct thought. But unfortunately, culturally, it's the case. And so people feel like, man, they screwed up. That's why they're in this line. And the reality is there's a lot of factors that happen that are outside of someone's control. And even when it is in their control, they picked the wrong spouse, the alcohol had a different effect on them, their employer riffed everybody. They should have worked harder, been smarter. That's all the narrative that unfortunately is so front and center and driving home this feeling of failure if you ask for help. But the reality that I see is sometimes the people asking for food are working harder than those that don't. And this economy and some of the systemic barriers that are in place keep a lot of people in that season of struggle. And there's more that all of us could be doing in our different roles to lift up our voice and to talk a little bit more about race and really reach out to those communities in ways that can be more strategic and provide more opportunity. But man, I think of what the message that you're bringing about, where do we go from here? We've been in this pandemic where there's been unprecedented need for us at the food bank. We went from feeding 60,000 people a week to the 120. And I met so many families that they felt hopeless. And some of it was because of the pandemic and the actual coronavirus, the fear of personal health and safety and the fear of a loved one contracting the virus and them passing away, to the loss of a job. I had this experience where on April the 9th, we fed 10,000 families. It was the largest domestic food distribution in America. And it was at Traders Village, and it was a time 4 weeks into the pandemic where there was so much uncertainty, so much unraveling of the economy, and the supply chain being so significantly disrupted that even if you had money, you couldn't buy groceries because H-E-B was sold out. That so many families came to get food from us that I could have never imagined. And it rocked me and the volunteers and the staff, and we brought more food. I stayed till the very end, and this family that went through the line, and we had started at about 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, and it was close to 6 o'clock that night. We had distributed close to 26, 27 semi-truckloads of food, all in that one day. And this last car was a minivan with a mom and dad sitting in the front seats, and they came in, and they were smiling, and I was like just dying, and I was like, I am just so sorry that it took so long, and are you guys okay? And the mom just said, well, no, we knew it was going to be a long time, so we brought some stuff for the kids to keep them busy, and we're just so grateful you're here, and no, don't worry, God bless you, you guys, thank you, Food Bank. And I said, no, thank you. It's, great that you came and let us get you these groceries, and tell me about yourselves. And the husband's like, well, this is my wife. And we met working at the hotel downtown, and I finally got the courage to ask her out. And she said yes. And we started dating, got married. We bought our first home, and we started our family, the three girls in back. And I knew something was wrong when our general manager at the hotel called us all in at the same time, because I usually work the evenings, and then my wife works the days, and we kind of juggle the kids. And so we both got called into work, and the general manager just said, listen, there's no guests. COVID has decimated the hotel, and so with no guests, there's no money, so no jobs. And they all were laid off. And he said, when we got in our car, and drove home, we didn't know what to do. We didn't know where to go. I was so worried we were going to get the coronavirus and we would get sick, and I didn't know if we were going to have health care. And my house payment's due. And how are we going to get groceries? And I reached out to you guys, and you started to tell me about all the things the food bank could do to help. And that you said that we could come, and we did. And so, man, when I was loading these groceries into the back of the minivan, the three little heads of these girls popped up, looking at me, all excited that they were getting groceries. And it just, it put in perspective what the pandemic was all about. And it's just people. And they're trying to meet a basic need. And you represent a part of our community that served our country, that sacrificed everything, lives if necessary, to defend our freedoms. And the reality is 1 in 7 people during the pandemic was either active or former military. And when I think of that statistic, now there's some reasons why it's so high in San Antonio, right? Military City, USA. We've got a lot of active and former military individuals and families. But I do think that during the pandemic, it eased some of that stress that I think military individuals and families feel. And that is, we're here to help, not to get help. And they don't want to ask for help outside of the boundaries of the military. I mean, my squadron, my unit, we take care of each other. And I do think that the pandemic helped people understand that they weren't alone, that there's a lot of people struggling, and it's okay to ask for help, even if you're wearing fatigues. And sometimes in the military, hunger can be camouflage, not seen. But it's so important to reach out to those that have served to make sure that their needs are met. And I do think that more needs to be done to make sure that our veterans have access to mental health resources, housing, opportunities for education, and kind of retooling. I mean, you know of all people what it's like to leave the military and transition into civilian life, and that can be a challenge. And we all need to do what we can to help.
It's definitely a challenge, and I'll tell you that as I'm listening to you share that, being in that food distribution line and bagging groceries and knowing that we have our basic needs met. Both my daughters are already out of the house, so we have enough. We're okay. We have that steady income coming in. But I'll tell you that despite the negativity that I saw on social media or on the news during this pandemic, I tell you, it seemed to bring the worst out in people, or that's a perception anyway. But at no time, or every time that I've volunteered either at the food bank or Soldiers Angels, or we just get together and go for a walk down the Riverwalk, we meet up at the Pearl or whatnot. I think it brings out the best in people. I think crisis, no matter how overwhelming a situation can be, I think it brings the best out in people, and it really just highlights how fragile life really is. So it's hold on to these relationships, build these relationships, give back if you can, but also if you need help, ask for help. It's okay not to be okay, but I do understand that it's difficult when you transition out of something that's so regimented and everything is structured, and this is where you're going to go get help, and this is who you talk to, and you come out into the civilian world. I retired in Florida. I retired right outside of Pensacola. And I decided to move to San Antonio. No job. I'm just like, we're going to the Alamo City because I want to be near the Alamo, and I want to be near the Rio Grande Valley. And here I was. We retired, and Hurricane Harvey hit, and then the Sutherland Springs shooting happened. And I mention that because I was hired as a high school teacher at Floresville. So some of my students had family members that were victims of that, and having to go through active shooter drills in school took a different meaning for those kids in my classroom. And you move on and just add some of the different challenges and just trying to fit in and trying to be a part of the solution. But this last year has been a I wouldn't call it a renaissance, but it's definitely been an awakening. And I think in some facets of our lives where people are recognizing, these relationships matter. Like, we need to take care of one another. We need to let water under the bridge, whatever fractures in our family we had, let's just set that aside, because this is bigger than us. This is a once in a lifetime, once in a generation type of global pandemic. So I always wondered how the staff and the leadership of the food bank was handling the extra the extra requirement or that extra need. But I just see all these. I see the news stories and the long lines and volunteers. So I'm just so happy that our organization, Team Red, White, and Blue, myself, my family, me as a veteran, that we've been able to give back and just support your efforts. So again, just thank you so much for what you do. And as we wind down our conversation here, so what do we do? How do we move forward? So we're at a transitioning point here with this pandemic. Maybe not at the levels that we were last year, and the need for food or just the need for service what would you tell our audience about service and giving back to the community?
Well, it's been incredible, Marty, just to have this conversation, because you're bringing back all these memories of just, the reality is, for my staff and volunteers, I mean, we all lived through this as a victim of the pandemic and, as a responder to it. And so I think back in those early, weeks of March and April, as the pandemic started to unravel, the commute to work was pretty awesome, man. There was no cars on the road, and, as everybody's running away from the crisis, our teams were running towards it. And just to be useful, I think, brought our city together in such an incredible way. There's a quote that those that have the least give the most. And I think San Antonio is a humble, hardworking city. And to see its heart come out and really always does, makes you proud to live here. When I think about, as the pandemic starts to conclude, there's people talking about, can't wait to get back to normal. And when I think of normal for us, that was maybe feeding 60,000 people a week. That was a city with the highest rate of poverty in the United States, with the most segregation between those that have and those that don't have. And so when we think about getting back to normal, is that the right destination? I just don't believe that normal is good enough. I think that we ought to be thinking about a pivot from the pandemic to something better. We learned in this pandemic some pretty hard lessons. When I think of my client, the typical client, it's female, and she's a parent, and she's working. And Marty, she's always gone to work sick, because if she didn't go to work, she didn't make her rent. In the pandemic, we told her, hey, if you've got a fever, stay home. Keep our customers safe. Keep your coworkers safe. But now that we're pivoting the economy, everyone's going back to work. And there's no safety net for her compensation. She doesn't get sick pay. There's no PTO. And yet many businesses are saying, but come back to work. And unless we change that policy, unless we say that we could be better as a city, we could be better as a business, we could be better as people by making sure people have those safety nets that allows them to keep their coworkers and their customers safe, a job that has benefits, a job that maybe pays a living wage, that allows them to meet some of those basic needs. We can choose that destination as a city. And I think it's my job to try to be a conscience, to try to be an influence, to help us see what it could be. And a San Antonio where everyone's secure. The term for hunger is generally food insecurity, not knowing where your next meal is coming from. And so if I'm going to solve hunger, it's making a food secure community. And you can say that in education, you could say that in housing, you could say that in finances, and you could say it mostly in employment. What does it mean to be secure in your employment? Because if ultimately, self-sufficiency comes through meaningful employment, is it really right that someone should work as hard as they can yet still be in the line at the food bank? So I see a destination for our city and community that's better than where we've been. It's free of all the baggage and again, prejudice that tends to plague the poor. But it's an opportunity that I hope our city embraces, and I hope others join us as we work to make a more secure San Antonio.
That's awesome. Back to better. So just 2 hours ago, I was in a meeting and my commander echoed those same words. It's not back to normal. It's back to better, because he heard it somewhere else. And I just think that's amazing. That's awesome that we need to look forward, not backward. But I got to tell you, Eric, this was fantastic. I was looking forward to just talk to you about what the food bank does, because I know what it has done for me. But globally, or even for the community, I just wanted to kind of hear your story and how we could help the veteran community and how this applies to that overall holistic health. And I got to tell you that volunteering is definitely helpful. And as a veteran, as a retiree, and just again remembering that lettuce sandwich, I remember when the times were tough, but now it's time to give back, and I have the means to give back. And again, through my veteran service organization, Team Red, White, and Blue, they're enriching my life. They're giving me a sense of purpose by connecting me to people like you, by promoting a healthier lifestyle. Where else would you want to do a podcast other than here with you in Operation Within? And then giving me just a purpose is now that I can give back and just really share my life experiences. But thank you so much for hanging out with us today. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Our Operation Within, we really look forward to continuing the dialogue. But anyway, y'all stay safe out there. Keep it simple, right? Don't forget to eat. Don't forget to smile, right? Just like we mentioned last time. So anyway, we'll talk to you all later.